Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to another LEAP session. This one will be on personal branding, growing your influence. I'm Courtney Sunna. I'm co-director of LEAP, and I have the pleasure of introducing our two panelists. So we have Kerry Lyons. Kerry is the CEO of a company called Ripple Street, which is a marketing influencer platform. And Jennifer DaSilva, who is the president of Berlin Cameron, which is a creative advertising agency. And both Kerry and Jennifer have over 20 years of working with Fortune 500 brands. So welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah. Very excited to be here.
Yeah. So my first question is really, from your perspective, being, the CEO and president of these companies, what is personal branding to you, and how do you see it evolving over the next few years?
Sure. Yeah, I'll go first. I think kind of most simply put, your personal brand is defining who you are and what you offer to the marketplace. And Jen and I were talking a little bit about this before, and thinking about branding more holistically. I don't think there's too fine a line between a brand that's defining itself and anyone defining their personal brand. It's really important to identify who you are, what you stand for, and also understand who is your target audience and what channels do you want to be building your personal brand in.
Yeah, thanks.
I think I totally agree with you on that. We talk about, when you think about a brand like a Volvo versus a brand like a Cadillac, you have like a distinct opinion on what Volvo is. Like, what would you guys say? Safety, yeah. Right? And let's do Cadillac's a little bit difficult. So, and what about Nike? Performance, the athletic, right? That's the one thing that we carry away from a brand, that we walk out of the room and say, oh, we know that brand because of all the messages that we create. And the same thing goes with a personal brand. As soon as I leave the room tonight, you guys are going to have an opinion on what my brand is, right? And it's what people, understand about you, how you communicate yourself, the values that I'm communicating to you that I have, and then how you interpret those values once I'm not here anymore. And so I think it's a really important part of our career development and our own development as well, because it's that one message that you have for that networking party that you go to, the meeting that you're in, the people that you're trying to connect with and build partnerships with. It's really establishing that one key elevator pitch of you. Yeah.
Thanks, Jennifer. And just to go on that, people can know you from networking events and things you attend, but in general, why is personal branding important today?
I think it's important for me being in the advertising world, especially to have a brand that communicates myself, because people are using my particular business as a service business, right? So they're also connecting to me as an individual in terms of, is this someone who I want to work with? Is this someone I want to partner with? So I think that's incredible. Or is this someone I want to have a relationship with? So, I think a personal brand, everyone has a personal brand, so it's really just how much you're honing and developing and working on it. Every single person in this room has one. It's just about how much work you're putting into taking it places.
Right, managing it and growing it. Yep. And I would say a big part of the value of developing your own personal brand is it gives you control of the narrative. So it's letting you create the story about who you are and who you aspire to be, rather than letting it just kind of haphazardly flow. So I think that's one of the key benefits, is that it gives you control of your own story and your own future, and will lead you to where you want to go, whether, like Jen said, that's through networking events or interviews. Once you build a personal brand, you will find that people will start to come to you when they are looking for what you have to offer. And I think, Jen, you have, just in terms of the business that you're building at Berlin Cameron and some of the things you're doing in terms of helping people develop side hustles as it relates to supporting women, you've done a really wonderful job, so that people in the industry know, if I have a female founded business, I want to work with Berlin Cameron, and I want to work with Jennifer DaSilva, because that's part of who she stands for and part of her personal brand. Just give you a little kudos there.
We actually have a side hustle program at the agency where people can take 1 day per month to devote to their side hustle and really, build their purpose and, build the things that they're really passionate about. One of the things as an agency is important to us is really being a culturally driven agency, and so it's important that all of our employees are are committing to themselves in the cultural world and learning all about the things that they're passionate about. And one of my particular passions is working with female founders and helping them to build their brand stories and helping them to connect to whoever I can connect them to help increase their awareness and their sales. And that's not only my personal brand, but it's something that we're building at the agency. And I find that once you have that overlap of your personal and professional brand, it makes it so much easier to, be excited to come into work every day, because I know that what my personal brand is being supported by my professional brand, and that connection just feels awesome.
So once you decide that you want to start shaping your personal brand, but you haven't really done that yet, how do you start and where do you start?
I think it's about thinking about your purpose, right? So defining, for me, I did this by a 20-word statement of what I wanted my purpose to be. And I said a little bit about that a second ago, but it's to be the CEO of a communications agency that is helping to elevate female, women-led businesses. And so that is something that I'm honing at work and also in everything that I'm doing personally. Like, here I am in front of a wonderful group of women like you, talking to you guys about how to build your personal brands and maybe connect with you after in terms of how to build your business. But I think that defining your purpose allows you to start to have to think about those opportunities that you want to take versus the opportunities that you don't want to take. It allows you to know the people that you want to connect to versus the people that you don't want to connect to. It allows you to craft that really critical story when connecting with someone and networking to get through, like, here's who I am, and then you establish that connection point, and having that purpose is the central point to all of that. And I think to define it, it's by asking yourself a couple questions. It's, okay, if I could, didn't have to do my job anymore and I had all the money in the world, like, what would I be doing? If I could take where I see myself in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, what is the kind of impact that I want to have on the world? And where do I see myself? How do I see myself playing into all this? And I think just by thinking about those questions and starting to craft a very quick first draft, sometimes I think your first idea of your purpose is probably where you'll end up. And then asking your personal board of advisors, what do you guys think about this? How do you get this from me? Do you think this is right? And for instance, Kerry is definitely one of those people for me, right? I would go to her, do you think this is authentic to the person that you know that I am, and that I can really deliver on this particular statement? And having those people that you can turn to and ask and really hone in on what you want to do.
Yeah. And I think as part of that exercise, it's thinking about what is that one thing that defines you. And it can be hard to come up with that in a vacuum, sitting in your apartment after a long day at work or trying to think about it over a weekend. It sounds like a really daunting task. So I think the notion of building a personal advisory board is a really nice takeaway too. So who are the people in your network that you trust, who really know you, who can reinforce that is your one thing? That's what I think of when I think of you. And that makes sense in terms of defining who you are and what you stand for. I think another important distinction, and it's something that I struggled with, in the past, is that we all only have one brand. There's one us, and we are the same person professionally, personally, and throughout kind of all the different facets of our lives. And I'll share with you kind of a personal bumble so fun fact for me, I have 5 children. I am the CEO of a small influencer marketing startup. My life is somewhat insane, and I have struggled over time with how to balance it all. And one of my kind of core values, which is another part of your statement, is identifying what are your values. One of mine is transparency. I'm not gonna pretend like I do it all well every day, because that's not true. And I'm not gonna pretend like there's perfect work-life balance, because I don't think there is. I think we all do the best we can on a daily basis. But my Bumble story is probably I guess it was just about 10 years ago. We had triplets, so that's my other fun fact. I'm full of fun facts. And when I went back to work after maternity leave, Twitter was starting to explode, and everyone had to be on Twitter, and Twitter was all the rage. And I had been blogging kind of through my pregnancy and after my little guys were born, and I was staying alive as a mom of 5, and I had a fun little hook, which was Lyons Den Mom. And I went back to work and I was like, oh my God, I can't be Lyons Den Mom. That's like mommy me, and she needs to stay in a closet, because when I go to work, I need to be like boardroom Kerry. So I started a whole new Twitter handle, which was Kerry M. Lyons. She was very serious. And I tried to do that. I mean, it doesn't work to be two different people. It's just simply poor judgment, and I learned from that mistake. And if you want to know which one I picked Lyons Den Mom. Like, take it or leave it, people. Like, it's who I am. And I think another one of my core values is trying to inspire women that you can achieve what you set your mind to. And if you want to balance motherhood and a career, it's very achievable. If you don't, that's a personal choice. But for me, the conscious decision I made about my personal brand was not to put the babies in a closet, to kind of celebrate that as part of, you know, the well-rounded human I aspire to be and hope to inspire other people to be as well. So.
Yeah. Great. So you're being authentic to yourself. You're asking yourself, you know, what do I stand for? And then also asking your network and asking others to kind of audit you.
Exactly.
So my next question, just to go on that, is how do you know if your personal brand is going to resonate with others that might not be closest to you?
I think you kind of, once you find your purpose, then you will find the right people to connect to it, because you're then driven by trying to create the connections around that purpose. And you'll start to see the influence of it growing by the more content you share, right? So the more things that you develop around your purpose, like for instance, I do a fair amount of thought leadership on Refinery 29. I write for Adweek, and really all of the things that I write about are all of the same subjects, just in different forms. Like, I write about women cheering for each other and supporting each other. I write about women, how can women better connect with one another? And you start to see what content sparks to the top. But for me, it's very similar to Kerry. It's always when it is so personal and when you relate it back to, you know, your authenticity. Like, I wrote an article for Refinery 29 that says, I've cried at work and I think that that's okay. And that was the headline of it. And I got some really bad feedback in the article. Someone said that I should have never become a mom if I didn't know how to juggle it. Someone said crying at work is totally unprofessional, and what was I thinking? But then the outreach on the other side of it was so worth it. And I also never read the comments. I learned that as well. But the outreach that I got was like from people I've never met before. Like, you just wrote my story, and you reveal. I am so touched that you revealed that part of you, and you were able to say that things that might have been total weak moments for me and come out with them. Like, us taking away that perfection that we all feel like we need to have, it allows us to better connect with one another in the end, and have better relationships. And maybe some people might not like them, but the people that do are the ones that are aligned with your brand, right?
Yeah, I read that article actually.
You did?
Came up on my LinkedIn feed a couple months ago.
Oh, well done.
Thank you.
What about you, Kerry? What do you think about resonating with a wider audience?
So I think so much of it has to do with being true to who you are, but also in thinking about, like, what are your channels of choice? So, and building a platform, right? So Jen is really lucky in that in her role and in all of the hard work over the years, she's established a really strong platform and a voice. And I think when you're starting out, that can be a little bit daunting. So it's identifying where are the platforms that you want to connect with people. Is it, you know, professionally and it's on LinkedIn, or are you on the more creative side and it has more to do with Instagram? And in those capacities, there are some hard metrics that you can look at to find if people are engaging. Are they sharing? Are they liking? Are they commenting like they did on Jen's story? I would say related to that is you can do a personal brand audit, right? So if you haven't Googled yourself, you should. You may be surprised at what comes up. And so that's one way of kind of assessing this is what I think people are saying about me and how I view my brand, but it's good to get that external view as well. And again, continue to refine and bounce ideas off that personal advisory board. So I've been in my CEO role now just for a few months. So I've been with the business for 7 years, but I assumed the role of CEO in March, and I do a lot of writing on the side as well. And I reached out to some people and I said, I'm thinking about writing this piece about like 5 things about a new CEO. And they said, you know what? Too soon. No, you haven't done the job yet. Like, it's premature. That's actually a bad idea. So I think it's really important to continue to bounce ideas off the people around you that you know and trust. And, you know, like that idea has been parked. You'll see that someday in the next couple of months. But I thought it was really good feedback. And I think it's really important, whatever stage you're in your career and developing your personal brand, to continue to get that external view, because I think it can be really valuable.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right what you said earlier, Jennifer, that it's, you know, you were talking about writing on Refinery 29, and they're great places for visibility to get your brand out there, but it's difficult when you're first starting. So do you have any creative suggestions, you know, early on in your personal branding journey on how to kind of cut through the noise and get some exposure?
I think the most important thing when you first start to establish, like, okay, you already have your personal brands, but like, how am I going to go to market with my personal brands, is establishing connections around your personal brand. And I think that's like a super easy step that, you know, you could start to take. Is it reestablishing connections that you've already had? Is it looking to those people that are in a particular space that you know, feel like you should be going? And it's starting to build up a network around your personal brand. And so I think that that's like a super easy first step. I think the content step can be like it can feel super daunting. I think a scrub of your LinkedIn profile is also a very important first step. Is like, do I have a picture that reflects my personal brand? Is my singular statement at the top of my LinkedIn profile, does that represent where I want to go, where I see myself, you know, what I'm doing in my career, and how have I reflected all of my experience today? And trying to do that that's a very easy step that you can do. And just someone to look into for that, her name is Katie Fogarty, and she has a company called Reboot, and she has amazing tips. You can just follow her on LinkedIn. She has amazing tips on how to, even in terms of your LinkedIn URL, that you should be changing your handle so it's not all those numbers, you know, and it's actually your name. Just very little and easy steps that you can take and make those changes. And like, it's like a tiny step in terms of your own personal brand. So I would recommend starting to follow her, because she shares a lot of great content. And then like, tiny steps in terms of content, like test the waters. Like, I've tried a lot, and sometimes it doesn't work and I get nothing. And then sometimes you'll say something and you're like, wow, people really resonated with that. Why? Oh yeah, I was really human, or trying to figure out why people really resonated with it, I think is really important, because it's going to help you in terms of the content that you share, and trying not to overthink it. Just like, yeah, I do it like,
be true to yourself.
Yeah, I do it sometimes at the gym in the morning. And the other day I had an idea of like, well, it's March, so it's Women's History Month. And is there something that I could do for March? And I was on the elliptical. I'm like, well, what if I did this connect 4 women? It just like popped into my head. Every day I connect 4 different women a day. And so through the month of March, I connected 80 women. And I tweeted it. So I'm like, okay, it's out there. Now I have to do it. And
it's a good way to hold yourself accountable.
I know. But it's just like, you know what? I'm not going to overthink these steps. I'm going to just throw these ideas out there and hold myself accountable to actually doing them. But I think that oftentimes we as women, you know, all the boxes that we have to check for a job placement, or to think that we can take those leaps, we don't, right? And building a personal brand is not boasting. It's sharing something of yourself with others so that others can connect with you. People want you to have a personal brand so they know how to connect with you. And I think that as women, it actually is a little bit more difficult for us to do that because of that boasting thing. And as we kind of allow ourselves to like, you know what, I'm gonna jump off that ledge. I'm gonna just tweet this out, and if no one comments,
no one comments.
No one comments, or I'll tell Kerry to comment.
Yeah. And I will.
And I've probably done that before. But yeah, I mean,
Likewise.
right. So, utilizing your friends and your networks to be able to do that, or ask them, what do you think about that? No one commented. Why, didn't feel authentic to me? It's really great to have that.
But two thoughts to build on that. One is that self-promotion shouldn't be shameful, right? Like if you're going to build a brand, you're going to need to promote it. And you should feel really good about that. And you should kind of create what I would call test and learn scenarios. Like Jen was saying, like give yourself some metrics, try things out, ask for feedback, look at the metrics in whatever channel you're using. If it didn't work, you course correct, you optimize, and you try something different. And I would also say, to back up a step further, is identify what your goals are. For any brand, whether it's personal or otherwise, any mission would start with identifying what your goals are. So when thinking about your personal brand, is your goal to build a brand to advance your career? Is it that you're actively interviewing and you really need to find a new job? Or is it simply that you're happy in your day job and you want to get involved in a volunteer opportunity, or maybe you want to do some freelance writing on the side, or maybe you're looking for a board position? Like, what is the goal that you're looking to achieve? I think it's really important to take a step back and define that before you just jump in, because that gives you parameters, right? That gives you kind of the guidelines on where to steer your story and your narrative. And your goals can evolve and change over time, but your brand ideally is going to be evergreen and true to who you are.
Yeah, great. And so when you're looking at someone, maybe a professional colleague that you think has a really great personal brand, what are some maybe metrics that you realize that's a tipping point, that's something I would aspire to, or what makes you reach that tipping point where you say, now I have a good brand?
I think that it's hard to say like you have a good brand or you don't have a good brand, because everyone's brand is so personal. I think like maybe it's like the influence of your particular brand and your influence to like a wider audience, and obviously like that's through following and an increase of following and building up a bigger network, and you can judge it by that. But I also think that you'll find that the people who have more following, and this is Kerry's area of expertise, but are the people who really share. Right, and so they share content, or they share expertise, or they share something of themselves versus like the taking, right? And so those are the people that you see their following going up and up and up and up, because they're sharing with other people to connect.
Right, and I would go back to saying that defining success is directly tied to the goals that you set up front. Right? So success may not be a ton of followers. Success might be 3 new business contacts that I can have lunch with in the next month for just an exploratory conversation. So I think, just as everyone has a different personal brand, everyone has a different metric for what is going to define success for them. And that's all about where you are in the arc of your career and what life stage you're in, and really managing every step of the process to be true to your brand and help you achieve, your short-term goals with an eye toward a longer vision.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I think when people think of, personal branding, they might think of more of a paid profession rather than other types of goals, like advancing in your career. Mm-hmm. So I really like that insight. Okay, so as far as kind of balancing your personal brand with your professional brand, what are your thoughts on that? So I know, Kerry, you said that you blend them, but do you think that's always the right strategy?
You know what, I think it's a personal decision, truly, and you have to do what's right for you. And it sounds so trite, but I think the idea of being true to yourself and being authentic and doing what feels comfortable for you. You shouldn't create a personal brand because you think it's going to please someone else. You should create a personal brand because it pleases you and accurately represents who you are and what you do. And I've said for a long time that I feel like my Twitter profile does a pretty good job of summing me up, and it's loosely put off the top of my head something like marketer by day, writer by night, full-time mom to 5 feisty tykes, always caffeinated, never bored, avid runner, you'd run too. So but so it's really, I think, candid and transparent and honest, and I'm juggling a lot, and hopefully I have a fairly decent sense of humor, and that defines who I am, and I'm true to that on Twitter, on LinkedIn, when I'm writing something. That's my personal approach, and that works for me. And building your personal brand isn't a one-size-fits-all strategy. You need to do what's right for you. But like I said, I think that let your North Pole and your guiding principle be exactly that. Be true to who you are. Don't try to create a brand to be someone who you're not or who you aspire to be, because I think you're much less likely to be successful if that's the route you take.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with everything that Kerry said, but I think that it really does help when your personal brand is linked to your professional brand, because it's driven by a central purpose, and then that enables you to just enjoy what you're doing across all levels. And I'm not a mom of 5, but I'm a mom of 2, and I believe in work-life integration. So being here tonight with one of my best friends, getting to do something in a professional setting and talking about personal branding to all of you is incredibly rewarding to me, but also knowing that I get to have dinner with Kerry afterwards is awesome. And that mix is so important to me, because we just have so little time for it. And, to try to integrate as much as you can to just make life simpler, really.
And as you're kind of growing and managing your personal brand, what kind of tools are available for people to help manage that?
I mean, I think the tools, again, I align with your goals, so it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. But I think as a personal branding network in the professional realm, which I think is probably the context we're mostly talking about, I do think LinkedIn is probably one of the best ones. And like Jen said, there's tools out there for really optimizing how you approach your LinkedIn profile. So she gave you a great resource. You can just Google it. There's literally articles about top 10 ways to stand out on LinkedIn. So much of it is about your headshot, believe it or not. And I kind of feel like I could use a new one. But number one no rule is to have a headshot on LinkedIn that doesn't look like who you are today. So if you're going to a networking event, or for me, I speak a lot and attend a lot of conferences, if I don't look like that girl there, I think there's a strong resemblance, people won't be able to find me. So it sounds like such a little thing that we might dismiss and think oh, I don't want to pay a lot of attention to that. I'm just gonna, for a long time, my headshot was from Jen's wedding, actually, because it was a professional photographer and I could crop it. But don't overlook the things that might seem minimal to you. Something as simple as your headshot says a lot about who you are, and it should be up to date. And like Jen said, writing that headline and having it really tightly represent who you are, I think is critically important. So I think, if we're talking about the realm of building a personal brand to advance your career, I think LinkedIn is a really good channel that also has really strong metrics. And you can follow people who you align with, who align with your values, follow people, follow organizations. And you also, in that capacity, have the ability for people to find you. Right? So the more active you are on LinkedIn, you saw Jen's article come up, right? That's not by accident. That's because she does a really good job of networking and self-promoting, and people share it, and she's authentic and true to herself. And that's how that was, rose up in your feed. So I think kind of in a nutshell, that would be it.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. I mean, I think that networking groups are really powerful, and just finding the right, it looks like you guys have all found a networking group that's obviously important to you, but thinking about how to take your brand and find groups that are aligned with what you're doing. And there's a lot of great resources out there for women these days. Elevate, for instance, is another really great women's networking group. So I think sometimes taking it offline into the IRL in real life, and really connecting with people and establishing those relationships, I think is really the most important thing to and really kind of delivering on that. If I'm saying that I'm connecting people, then that means I'm always meeting people and always saying yes to the people that reach out to me to ask me questions or figure out how I can help them. And I do that. Once a day I meet a new woman to then help to connect her. And that's something that I try to always stay true to, because that's a part of my brand, right? So just trying to find those little rules for yourself and not make them so challenging, because that's actually fun for me. I really do love it. So trying to find little things for yourself that you can hold yourself accountable and hold your brand accountable to, because brands are doing that all the time, right?
Yep. I was going to say, I think in-life networking in real life is critically important. And for us over the years, it was Ani, which was Advertising Women of New York. So I think there's some people here who are in kind of the communications PR. They rebranded. They're now called She Runs It. So that's a great local organization for people in the communications field, whether that's PR, advertising, or marketing. They do networking events routinely and also have kind of continuing education events. Another good organization is called NEW, which is the Network of Executive Women. And they offer similarly kind of thought leadership and networking wine nights. So I think that was a really good point. We've spent a lot of time talking about building your brand online and in social channels, but the value of meeting people in real life and forging those connections. Like I said, your goal might be, schedule 4 coffee dates in the next 3 months. That's a great goal, because when you meet with someone face to face, you make a lasting impression. You're building your brand, and it's really good, just so that you know, to do that when you're actually not looking for a job, to get out there and network and meet people when you don't need something. Yeah, NEW, Network of Executive Women. They have a New York chapter, a Chicago chapter. So there's a lot of opportunities out there to build connections in actually real life.
Great. I think you've shared so much valuable information, so I'm going to ask you one more question before I turn it over to the audience. So who is someone that you think is a great example of a personal brand that we could look into?
Wow, I didn't prepare for that question. I mean, honestly, and this is going to sound like I did prepare for it, but so Jen and I go way back. She was, were you like an assistant account soup at J. Walter Thompson right down the street? So we started.
Like assistant account executive, like the lowest of, like mostly like an intern.
Yeah, she was just a sweet young little person who arrived in my life, and here we are. Lots of years later, I don't want to quantify it. But truly, so we've known each other before building a personal brand was a thing, right? And who we are as humans and our core values are intact. They don't really change over time. And, without wanting to blow too much steam, I really give Jen a lot of credit for being true to who she is, for aligning her personal and professional brands, and for building not only a side hustle, but a business that's dedicated to elevating women in their careers and to connecting them. I think it's very easy to look to, other people, whether they're, names that come up in Forbes or Inc., in terms of successful business people, but we've got one sitting right here. So without having a canned answer, that's a little bit more rigorous than that. That's true and from the heart.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I think my personal brand came out of failure. Like, my agency was not going to succeed if I didn't find a way to reinvent around it. And I saw that in the distance, and I had to figure out a new way and a new purpose for myself, and that's when that all kind of happened. If I didn't challenge myself, then I just had to leave and do something totally different, and that I was able to create a new experience for myself at the same place that I've been for 16 years. And I think that that's something that's really valuable to think about how you can reinvent yourself where you are right now versus do I need to take a leap totally externally? Is there something that you can do to change the environment that you're at to be more aligned with who you are? Because you probably is it developing a women's group at your current job? Is it something like that to change your current role and your environment versus totally thinking externally? And I think that was a really key thing for me that really helped me to define everything that I've been doing in the last 5 years. In terms of my person, I mean, there's so many women that I have connected to in the past couple years, but one of the women that I personally, and obviously I love Kerry, I want her to write a book about her adventures, and I will help her to do this. That is one of my personal missions. I will, I will. I've already tried, but we will continue to try. Is Christy Wallace, and she's the CEO of Elevate Network, and I'm not sure if any of you guys are members of that, but she is really an incredible human. She does She leads Elevate. It has grown from a very small organization to a massive networking organization that's nationwide. They have really great services and content for women to follow on everything from forming squads around interest so that you're able to really connect with people that are around and related to your purpose. But she's constantly giving back in terms of speaking and engaging and getting out content. She has a podcast. So she's literally living and breathing it every day. And I think she really does an amazing job. And she's so authentic in it. So she's one of my perfect.
Great. Thank you both so much for all of your advice and insights.